A few months ago I was in a vintage shop and I found this. It's a compilation book of old photographs from around my city of Brighton that were taken about 100 to 110 years ago. And as I went through the book, I noticed how remarkably similar so many of the old photographs are to modern-day street photography that you might still see today. So of course that gave me an idea for a project, going around the city with the book in one hand and my camera in the other, remaking as many of those photos as I possibly can. Now, this one goes to some very cool places, so fasten your seatbelts, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's dive in. So the first one we're going to try for is the clock tower, which is just behind us here. In the book, this is right on the front cover. Now, challenge here is that back in the day, this was not a bus lane and it did not have traffic lights in the way. So hopefully we can find a way of framing up the shot so that it matches the proportions of the clock tower with the building in the background, but it isn't in the way of a bus. And I mean, the original photo does have cars in the foreground, so like a car or two would be fine, but you get about 15 or 16 buses passing through here every minute or so. That's not really an exaggeration, it's like one of the main bus routes through the city, so I may have to wait a while. Let's see what happens, I guess. And after a little bit of waiting around, this is what we got. Now, these photos do have a 100-year difference, but as you can see, the clock tower in Brighton is basically exactly the same. The roads around it have actually changed, and as obviously have the cars that are going past it, but the tower itself is pretty similar, and that was very cool to see when I actually got that comparison down. The other obvious difference is the lack of ceremonial bunting in the newer photo. I don't know if back in the day that was there all the time, or whether that was just there for a festival. Maybe if it was some sort of festival going on, then that's why the photo was taken. But that is total speculation on my part. So, let's move on. Hi, sorry, can I ask a very strange question?
Sure.
I'm doing a project where I'm trying to recreate old photographs, and I have this one of two ladies stood outside the Grand. And I'm sort of looking for someone to be a stand-in, if that's all right.
Sure,
would you mind doing that? Can I just could I get you to stand pretty much on those two last red tiles?
Yeah.
You don't happen to have umbrellas with you by any chance, do you? That would make it amazing, but that is okay. That's perfectly fine. Thank you so much. I guess if you're, I mean, these two aren't really doing anything in particular, so stand very naturally and we'll get it locked in. A bit of help from some strangers, and I am really happy with this one actually. The composition did have to be changed a little bit because the place where the ladies were stood in the original is now a cycle path, and I didn't really want people stood on a cycle path while they're posing to take a photo. That seemed very dangerous. But other than that, I think this is a really cool way of showing how the city has changed, and also how fashion has changed. Like I noted, there's no umbrellas or parasols this time, but there are nice scarves and jackets instead, so maybe that's just the modern version. I'm doing a photography project where I'm trying to recreate old photos from Brighton. If you wouldn't mind, I need a group to pose on the beach for a minute or two, if that's alright. If you want to say no, that is completely fine. That would be so amazing. So I'm trying to go for this basically. So stoic in the original. So we'll kind of we'll keep it to roughly that kind of idea. And they're about there. This was one that required a family group, so I'm really happy that I ran into these people and that they were happy to help out with the video. I also want to say congratulations to Ali, who's in the brown jacket, because it was her hen do, and this video was actually recorded such a long time ago that I'm sure by this point she is happily married, so congratulations, and I hope that the wedding was a great day. Thank you again for helping out with this. I'm super happy with how the photo came out. The next stop on the Grand Tour is over by the Shelter Hall, which is now a sort of food court. This used to be a place where shellfish and oysters were bought after being fresh caught at sea. This is one that we're just going to have to call a modern approximation. The original oyster stands that used to be there don't exist anymore, so I've instead taken a photo of someone in the same location, but they're still eating food. So it's the same kind of idea, but, you know, it's fish and chips outside a pub instead of oysters which have been fresh caught that morning. It's not quite the same, but it's close enough. Now, Brighton's had an aquarium on this spot since the 1870s, and the photo that I've got of it was taken in 1908. It shows a grand old entrance of the clock tower, and it's really impressive and very cool. Modern day, not so much. It just looks like a standard little entrance hallway. Inside the aquarium is awesome. It still looks really, really good. But the outside is not one of the places about the city that's changed for the better, unfortunately. But I can still very easily frame up the shot and tick this one off the list. Yeah, I won't lie, this one's a bit of a disappointment. I mean, look at it. It used to have this grand old clock tower. It was kind of more isolated in its surroundings as well, but there is something cool that happened, because when I was going down the steps of the aquarium, I actually got a chance to recreate another photo, because one of the original ones in the book was a family posing on the steps, and I just so happened to run into these two, who were more than happy to help me out. So once again, thank you to the kindness of strangers. You're really making this project a lot easier. This might be one of my favourites from the set, just because of how much it's changed, but how much it's completely stayed the same. It's a view from just off of the pier, and while some of the buildings are the same, there is also now a gigantic tower called the i360, and there's a lot less people on the beach, although that could have been because when I went out it was a bit of a cold day, so maybe that isn't quite a fair comparison. And for contrast of things that have changed a lot, this is a shot of what the lead up to the pavilion looks like. The gates that you can see in the old photo were actually removed after the First World War, and they were replaced by this single gate which you're now seeing on the new photo. I really like that I got the composition of having two people about to walk through the gateway. That was definitely worth waiting around for, even if I did have to wait for a little while to get that. The next section of the book should be a little bit easier, basically just walking around shop fronts, because there's a whole chapter of the book that is about old shops. So I want to see if they've changed, what used to be there compared to what is there now, how many of them are still shops. I'm pretty sure some of them have turned into houses, but let's go and have a look. First up, what used to be a watchmaker's and general kind of trinket shop has now turned into one of the finest British establishments, the kebab shop. Now, this one is right down the road from the station, so interestingly, the book that I have notes that the little trinket shop would have been to catch the eye of passers-by as they come out of the train station, and actually I think that that applies to the kebabs just as much as it would have done to little trinkets. This is another one of my favourites from this whole project. See, in the 1920s this was a butcher's shop, and the original photograph had the two butchers stood outside it. Nowadays it's a clothing shop, but I went in to ask the staff that were working in there if they'd want to pose outside like the butchers did, and they absolutely were up for it, and they absolutely nailed it. I really love this photo. And over in Hove, we've got a shop that in 1920 opened up as a co-op, and in 2025 is still a co-op, 105 years later. There's a point to be made here about the strength of worker-owned businesses, but if I start going off on that, it'll be an entirely new video, so let's just enjoy the photo for now. Now, according to my guidebook, 120 years ago, this hotel behind me used to be the headquarters of the Automobile Club, and people would come and park their cars outside and then go on long drives. Today we don't have that, but we do have a van that's parked outside and a delivery truck for food for the hotel, and if you parked your cars on this stretch of pavement now, you would be parked illegally and you'd all get parking tickets. Maybe if you're a member of the Automobile Club 120 years ago, then you've got special permission, but who knows? And then slightly down the road at the Hotel Metropole, there's another bit of automotive history. According to the caption on this photo, this was the motor car known as Present Times, which really says a lot about how important cars were back then, that they got such a extravagant name. It's not like calling a car Betty or Liam or something like that. But the modern version of that, parked outside the Metropole, is a Nissan Juke, which is, I mean, it's also a car, right? It's not quite as exciting, but it's a car still. And this is a part of town which is completely different to how it was back then, and soon will be different again. It's the old Steam Gardens, where the Victoria Fountain is, that you can see behind me, and also where the tram stop used to be. Now, Brighton doesn't have trams anymore, and a lot of the book is photos of old trams, which I have absolutely no chance of catching, but there is still a lot of buses that go past this road, so in a way the tram stop is kind of still there, because, you know, it's sort of like a tram, but worse and not as fun. I don't know, I feel like if I say worse, I'm going to get people in the comments section having wars about which form of public transport is better, so let's not say worse, let's just say different. But as you can also see behind me, the area around the Victoria Fountain is currently having work done to it. So once again, the photos that I'm taking now will, just as soon as I've taken them, be out of date again, which is kind of fun to think about, and I guess that's really what I'm learning throughout doing this project, is just how important it is to take photos of things that might seem mundane and might seem like they're part of everyday life, because in 5 years' time they might not be, in 100 years' time they definitely won't be. So yeah, anyone who's watching this video 100 years in the future, feel free to do a follow-up of what Brighton looks like now. I don't think that you'll be watching this video 100 years in the future. I don't think I'm going to be that famous. You know, there's a chance. Like and subscribe, right? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Ultimately, my biggest learning from this project was something that I really wasn't expecting. I thought I was going to go and have some fun, go and make some photographs, and then compare and contrast with the old ones. But what I ended up discovering about the nature of photography through that process is just how essential it is as an art form to capturing history. Photography has always been about freezing a moment, but this has really made me realize that what you're actually doing is freezing a moment in time and preserving that moment for future generations so that everyone can see how their towns and cities have changed and see how life has changed over the years. It's actually been significantly more eye-opening than I expected, and I've really enjoyed the project. Perhaps watching this video has inspired you to go and do the same thing in your own city, wherever that might be in the world. Go and find some old photos, go and take some new ones, and then compare and contrast and see how the place that you live in has changed over time. That's all for now though. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace out. I will see you in the next one. Have a really great day.